The Jewish Week on JN1.
I'm here in the Marais, the historic Jewish neighborhood of Paris. You may be surprised to know that Jews have been living in France for more than 1,600 years. It's one of the oldest diaspora communities. Over the centuries, pogroms, expulsions, legal discriminations, and the Holocaust failed to destroy this community, which continued to grow, adapt, and find its place in French society. Today, there are more than 500,000 French Jews. That's the largest group in Europe. Join me for a special report as we look at this community's history, its many faces, and the future challenges. Historical documents mention Jews in the area of Lyon as early as the 1st century, but evidence of a Jewish community appears only in the 5th century near Paris, Marseille, and Arles.
We have traces of Jews all over France. Recently we found under the Palace of Justice of the city of Rouen an old yeshiva.
But despite their early foothold in France, safety and stability eluded the Jews for hundreds of years. Religious persecution reared its violent head every century until the French Revolution. Jews were periodically subjected to restrictive edicts, violent pogroms, forced conversions, and expulsions. Despite all the instability, Jews survived as merchants and moneylenders. To boot, France's city of Troyes produced one of the greatest rabbis of all time, Rashi. His 11th century commentary on the Torah is still studied today. The watershed moment for the Jews of France came in the 18th century.
In 1791, the French Revolution gave the French citizenship to all the Jews in France. So Jews are well established in France.
France was the first European country to emancipate its Jews, and the effects were swift and profound.
Immediately they joined French society. They went to top engineering schools, top universities, entered civil service, went in industry, banking business. And Jews were an important part of our economic development in the 19th century.
And they contributed no less to France's intellectual and cultural development. Politician Adolphe Camus, sociologist Émile Durkheim, and Impressionist painter Camille Pissarro were among the first to spring from the Jewish community's bustling center in Paris. But the inability of emancipation to end anti-Semitism appeared in 1894 when false charges of treason led to the conviction of a Jewish officer named Alfred Dreyfus.
He was a Jew, and they thought it would be much easier to accuse him, and nobody would dare, they would get the people on their side somehow. So they forged, some fires, etc., to accuse him.
After writer Émile Zola demanded a re-examination of the evidence, Dreyfus was exonerated and released from prison in 1906. On the eve of World War II, the Jewish community had added more famous faces to France and now numbered 330,000. Hitler's invasion of France in 1940 cut short the community's soaring success. The Nazis rounded up over 76,000 Jews, or 25% of the community, and deported them to death camps. All but 2,000 died. The names of those victims are engraved on these walls at the Holocaust or Shoah Memorial in Paris.
It was the first decades after the war. People really thought, they were happy to be alive and to be able to they were turned towards the future. They made children, they got themselves new social situations, they built themselves alive. But they always felt it was need to talk, but they couldn't speak. They had the feeling they could burden the society with their own personal situation as Jews.
Jews slowly began to talk about their wartime experience and France's own role in carrying out the Nazi deportations under the Vichy government, a fact President Mitterrand and Jacques Chirac finally publicly admitted in 1995. The post-war Jewish community got a boost in the 1960s when more than 150,000 Sephardic Jews fleeing anti-Semitism in Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia arrived in France.
They came with a strong religious identity, which the Ashkenazis had lost. And they came also with a very strong connection with the State of Israel.
They revitalized traditional Jewish life in France, building synagogues, yeshivas, community centers, and schools across Paris, Marseille, and Lyon. Today, the Sephardic community makes up more than half the 500,000 Jews in France.
On a, je le disais, une communauté d'abord très vivante.
It is a very vital community. It is very dynamic, and it is very engaged. There were lots of people in synagogues for Yom Kippur, and now for Sukkot. In the various cultural organizations, religious or not religious, there is a vibrancy.
Qu'elles soient religieuses ou culturelles, il y a une très grande vitalité de la communauté juive.
Here in the Marais neighborhood of Paris, you can find kosher bakeries, Jewish bookstores, and Judaica, even a sukkah. Young people set up stands on the street to sell etrogs and other items for the Sukkot holiday. An Israeli import, falafel has become a Jewish specialty food here. At this stand, the staff even speaks Hebrew. Yet today, France's thriving community is once again facing challenges. Shmuel Trigano is one of France's leading intellectuals with more than 20 books to his name. As a Jew, he's deeply concerned over what he calls the rise of a new kind of anti-Semitism.
This new anti-Semitism, it is possible to call it anti-Zionism. But anti-Zionism is not, as it is said, a criticism of the Israeli politics, but a criticism of the existence of Israel as a state, as a nation state.
Philippe Carcenti is the deputy mayor of Paris's Neuilly suburb. He's been in the headlines for his legal battle against the Al-Dour's story, what he calls a false report by the French media in 2000 that the Israeli army killed a young Palestinian boy.
When you read the newspaper, when you watch TV, when you listen to radio, when it comes to Israel, it's always negative and it's always aggressive.
Anti-Semitism is also coming from the traditional right, from the National Front Party, and more worrisome from radicalized Muslims. According to a report by the French Jewish community, anti-Semitic incidents went up more than 50% in 2012. The most traumatic was the fatal shooting of 3 Jewish children and a parent at a Jewish school in Toulouse by Muslim radical Mohammed Marais.
We're trying to interfere the more that we can with the government, with the public authorities, to try to see to it that every thing which may bring up anti-Semitism would be fought.
There's no doubt that many of France's Jews feel alarmed by an increasingly hostile environment.
It's not an image that I like, to see the buildings of the community, the synagogues, the schools, protected by the police and transformed sometimes into a kind of bunker.
Here in St. Paul, there is a big community, Jewish community, but in some districts in Paris, we can't have a kippah as we wish.
At this Jewish school in Paris's 12th arrondissement, opinions are divided about what the future holds.
I think that French Jews are in an ambivalent position. They are very happy to be in France, and they are build communities, community centers, schools, and also they have food in Israel or in another country.
Joe Toledano is the Director General of the Alliance Israélite Universelle Schools. He says more and more kids are choosing to go to university in the U.S. or Israel, but many parents hope their kids will still stay home.
We are very strong. We are a big community, and we want to stay in France. It's our country.
What kind of France will the next generation of Jews grow up in? That seems to be the nagging question that hovers like a dark cloud over this centuries-old community. Will the right of religious freedom continue to erode in the Republic, forcing observant Jews to hide their identities more and more on the streets of Paris and other cities? Will anti-Semitism and anti-Israel propaganda make even the most secular Jews feel that perhaps France is no longer their home? It will take 10, 15, possibly 20 years to answer these questions. In the meantime, this rich and dynamic community will do its best to thrive. From the Place de la Concorde in Paris, I'm Jordana Miller reporting for JN1.